the Hoop Show. I'm your host, Chad Cook. With us, as always, is Marcus Shockley from BasketballElite.com. And this week, our special guest is Alex Schwartz from North Star B-Ball. And you can find him on the web. The URL is blog.northstarball.com, and his Twitter handle is @NorthstarBball. Alex, thank you for joining us.
Chad, thank you very much for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, let's talk some hoops now. A topic that we have covered during a past episode is Rodney Purvis, the North Carolina State freshman, was unable to make a trip with the Wolfpack overseas in a preseason set of games, and he attended Upper Room in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And the question with the NCAA was about his about the courses he had taken and the clearinghouse. Marcus, give us an update on that.
Well, Chad, it's really good news for NC State fans is that the NCAA has fully cleared Rodney Purvis, and he's going to be able to play this season. And they did a pretty exhaustive investigation, or inquiry, I guess is a more accurate statement. But even going so far reportedly as requesting all the textbooks that he used during his 4 years of high school, every transcript, probably far more than most high school students would ever have to go through to prove that they were eligible. After all that, it's 2 wins actually for Rodney, or for the two programs, one being Upper Room. Now Upper Room students, the guys who are going to be playing there this year, don't have to really worry about their eligibility quite so much, that the NCAA has cleared their first guy, Rodney Purvis, and the second being Rodney Purvis now being able to play. And I guess technically a third would be NC State fans who are really ecstatic that they've got this top point guard, probably a future NBA first rounder, coming to play for them this year.
Great. Well, and somewhat similar to that situation, a couple players that are freshmen this year that prepped at Notre Dame Prep, another school that has kind of a reputation for having a lot of good basketball players. Alex, tell us about those young men and the situation that they're in.
Yeah, it's kind of an unfortunate situation over at Notre Dame Prep. A couple kids, Miles Davis, who's a kid from Jersey, and Jalen Reynolds from Michigan, both fifth-year kids, and they were at Notre Dame Prep this past year. And recently, Jalen Reynolds at Brewster Academy, but another kid who was recently ruled ineligible. The other one was Sam Cassell, pardon me. So those 3 guys all ineligible now. Cassell and Davis from Notre Dame Prep, and Reynolds from Brewster. And all 3 of them won't be playing college basketball this year, it seems like. Cassell was headed to Maryland, Davis to Xavier. And the reason I had Reynolds on my mind, he's also going to Xavier. So they lost 2 kids from their class. And it's a tough situation for those guys, especially because some other kids from Notre Dame Prep are eligible. Steven Adams, who is a top talent from New Zealand and was going to Pitt, doesn't seem to be any issue with his eligibility. So an unfortunate situation for Xavier, for Maryland, for the kids involved most of all.
Yeah. So what do you think, Marcus? Is this the NCAA trying to make sure that some of these new, I won't say new schools, but non-traditional schools that players tend to transfer into, they tend to have many college prospects gathered onto one team together? Are they trying to make sure that these aren't places that people go to maybe get their grades straightened out and smooth the process out towards the college ranks?
I think that's exactly what it is, Chad. I mean, on the surface, the NCAA is well aware that several players might not be able to get into college by going through the traditional route. So there's people will try to hide players. And I'm obviously not saying this about every player. There are a lot of players who do the schoolwork and do actually get, the grades. But the NCAA is aware that there are people playing a shell game trying to move players and cover their grades. But the caveat to that is the NCAA does not have a really good reputation of being able to do that kind of thing very well. So as Alex mentioned, in the case of Sam Cassell, his father is Sam Cassell, the former NBA player, and he ripped the NCAA for what he saw as unfair tactics and unfair practices. And it is true that the NCAA has often made missteps or dealt with players in a heavy-handed way. So it's really one of those things where you have to kind of wait and see, and you kind of have to give the players the benefit of the doubt until you hear the entire story. You just never know if the NCAA is actually cracking down or something, or if it's just another case of heavy-handedness.
Well, and speaking of the benefit of the doubt, these issues are all about coursework and grade point averages and like you said, textbooks. What textbook did the young man use? Well, my opinion would be if these young men have qualifying SAT scores, the benefit of the doubt in my book would go towards them because they've obviously learned what you need to learn to pass that standardized test, not pass it, but to get a good enough score on that standardized test that we've all been using for decades. So unless I have that wrong, that would be where I would weigh in on that situation. Now, moving over, let's start our next topic. We've talked a lot in the last few weeks about fall leagues and how that's the thing going on these days. Not high school football, not college football, not pro football, but basketball fall leagues. And another thing that just cranked up in the last 10 days or so is college basketball coaches being able to go in and watch high schools, players from high schools work out in their own high school gym. That started not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, and it will last until November 11th, courtesy Alex Schwartz informed me of that earlier. And so that means coaches are talking to players, players are committing to colleges. You mentioned Rodney Purvis in North Carolina State. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marcus, but they've been making a lot of waves in recruiting, both with this freshman class and with this 2013 class. So start with that commitment at North Carolina State, and then go from there.
All right. Well, I guess the big news for NC State being Rodney Purvis, of course, but the second big news is they landed Anthony Barber, who's a really solid point guard, plays for Boo Williams on the EYBL circuit. Barber's quick. He's definitely the kind of athlete that NC State is looking to get, the kind of player that they hope will put them up in that upper echelon of the ACC. As you said, right now is one of the periods where you see a flurry of activity on recruiting. Colleges are actively going out right now during this live period, seeing players in workouts, talking to them on the phone, talking to the players in person. Got a lot of information on players over the past couple of weeks of them being offered or being seen by schools. This is one of the times where you'll see that, and then sometimes you'll see guys commit. Like one of the guys I like a lot is Deontay Baldwin, who played with the CP3 All-Stars. Deontay, I've always said, is one of those lights-on guys. He plays well under the big lights. He takes defense seriously, a really good get for UNCG. And Coach Miller at UNCG also got Tyrone Outlaw, who plays with Garner Road, who I think is a phenomenal player, an excellent student. And both of those guys may be two guys you'll be hearing about in the NCAA tournament with UNCG, who likes to try to get into that tournament and show that they can play with, some of the upper teams in North Carolina.
Right. Now, Alex, what are some of the commitments and recruiting news that you've focused in on lately here?
Well, Marcus had the first one. It's Anthony Barber. I mean, it's a kid who is a big-time pickup for NC State. He's a top 10 player, an elite-level point guard. And while he might be the biggest name to commit, certainly not the only one, it's been a flurry of commitments over the past 4 days that has been crazy, to say the least. There's been big-time players and mid-majors and low majors, making their decisions all over the place. Some other ones, Moses Kingsley decided to go to Arkansas, and that's a great pickup for the Razorbacks. They now have the Arkansas Wings front court headed to Fayetteville together, along with Bobby Portis, a kid from Little Rock, Arkansas. And they're both top 40 players or so in the class of 2013, and that's huge for Arkansas. Kendrick Nunn, a big-time scorer out of Chicago, high school teammate of Jabari Parker. And it's big for he's for Illinois, and that's a big pickup for Illinois to get a Chicago kid under new head coach John Gross. And he's a former Texas A&M commit, is Nunn. And a kid who maybe not as big of a name as those guys, who I like a lot and think could have a big impact, is Kasim Chandler from Newark, currently at prep school in Pennsylvania. He's going to go to Quinnipiac, and I think that he's a kid who's really undervalued. He was a backup on the AU circuit to Josh Brown, who's going to Temple with Sports U. So maybe he didn't get the type of exposure some of those other guys, but I think at Quinnipiac he has a chance to be a real impact player for them. And he'll be teaming with a former high school teammate of his, Tariq Carey. When they were earlier in high school, they were teammates at Newark East Side. They'll be back together at Quinnipiac, and I think that's going to be a very nice backcourt for Tom Moore.
Right. And we brought we discussed something before the show, and I'll share it here because it's a little bit noteworthy, Marcus, I think. Anybody who missed last week's show with Shanna Bright about social networking and things like that with how it relates to recruiting in sports. It was interesting. You mentioned Kasim Chandler, and we also talked about how supposedly Brandon Goodwin out of Norcross High School in Atlanta committed to Gardner-Webb, which I saw on Twitter, reported by some recruiting guys, and I was very happy for Brandon. He's a good player, Georgia guy, and then right after that, Brandon and his AAU coach and all kinds of people, cleared that up. No, I did not commit yet. I'm on a visit, and so that was kind of interesting. I thought, Marcus, in light of our last episode, but some of the commitments that I've seen that were kind of noteworthy to me. Taj Shamsuddin, I hope I didn't butcher that name too bad, but point guard out of Columbia High School, great student, really good player, played for the Southern Stampede 17-under team, has won 3 straight state titles at Columbia, and little left-handed point guard, and he's going to Auburn, committed to Auburn. Guy from your neck of the woods, Marcus B.J. Gladden, committed to Akron. He's kind of, I really fell in love with his game over the summer. Kind of a tweener, 6'5" guy, but plays so hard, really attacks the basket. I've seen it said, you tell me, Marcus, he can face up and hit the jump shot as well?
There's no doubt about this. Yeah, he definitely can play. He's a big physical guy. BJ, good guy. Akron got a real steal with him, I think, and we'll see him this season at Olympic.
Yeah, and that's a great point. We'll see Olympic at Netcast Sports during the high school season. We'll be broadcasting their games along with Taj Shamsuddin from Columbia. Another guy, Richland Northeast product, Aaron Scott. I really enjoyed watching him play for the South Georgia Kings last AAU season. He's 6'3", combo guard in the best sense of the term. He can handle it, create off the dribble, very athletic, can shoot it from deep. And as you can tell, I kind of like these mid-major type commits. So I kind of like following those guys. Here's something I'll try out on you guys. I'll go with you first, Alex. I'm so impressed with the process, this recruiting process, and how good these coaches have gotten with zeroing in on people. So what I mean by that is Augusta, Georgia, where I'm from, doesn't have an overload of prospects, and so all of a sudden here, Ahmed Hill, who plays for the 16 and under Southern Stampede, we've covered him in the past. Marcus is, I think, really likes his game. Really exploded this past summer at the Peach Jam and other places for the Southern Stampede, and all of a sudden here in this past week, I've got it written down here. Just in the first 5 days of coaches being able to see him go out and watch people, the Indiana coach, the South Carolina coach, the Georgia Tech coach, Kansas, Cincinnati, Texas, Marquette, all in the first week, were in little old Augusta to see Ahmed work out. And so they get to where the players are and they find the players. Do you agree with me that it's kind of fascinating to see how efficient this thing has become?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can play, people will find. It doesn't matter where you're from. And there's a kid at Stanford right now, Josh Hustis, who's from Montana, which obviously isn't necessarily known as a huge hoops hotbed. But if you can play, people will find out. But you see even kids from Europe and other countries who are coming over now. And, just the scouting process is so much more in-depth and with so many big-time AAU tournaments and everything. And, Ahmed Hill is a kid who plays for, like you said, a very good Southern Stampede team and had a very strong summer, helped lead them to the championship game at the U16 for Peach Jam.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to get into you describing your service. So talk about what your website and what folks like you do to really spread the news about where the players are, who the players are, and probably help make that efficient system.
Yeah, I mean, my website, like you said earlier, North Star Basketball, and I kind of just try to produce, put out information, use my Twitter account as well, North Star B-Ball. Right now, I've kind of been my rankings week. Put out my 2014 rankings yesterday. My 2013 rankings will be out on Thursday, and I just try to kind of keep people updated on recruiting news and things of that nature. And then I have a scouting service that I co-operate with Jeff Borzello from CBSSports.com. That's the way the coaches can kind of stay in touch with what's happening in the high school basketball world at times when they can't be out.
Right, right. We really appreciate you joining us. Before we go, we are going to check in with the Coach's Corner, defending the ball screen.
Hi guys, I'm here today at Bishop McGuinness High School in Kernersville, North Carolina. Joining me today is Coach Josh Thompson, head boys basketball coach at Bishop. Coach Thompson also has a state championship under his belt, as well as being an AAU coach for the NC Spartans. Today, Coach is going to show us some tips and tricks on the court to help make your game better.
We're going to talk about defending the ball screen. There are a lot of different ways that you can do it, but what we're going to be talking about right now is the trapping the ball screen. If a great player has the ball coming off the ball screen, we sometimes want to get the ball out of his hand. And our 3 goals with trapping the ball screen, number 1, we want to force a retreat. We want the ball going backwards instead of going to the goal. The second thing we're trying to do is maybe get a deflection out of our trap. We can get a steal and turn their offensive possession into an offensive possession for us. And the third thing we're trying to do, if a great player's got the ball and we're trapping that pick and roll, we want him to give the ball up. So we're trying to get a deflection out of it, we're trying to make him give the basketball up, and we're trying to force a retreat. Now, we're going to trap this ball screen. This is a great player here. We want to get the ball out of his hands, so we're going to trap it. So when the ball screen comes, the number 1 thing, we need this guard, this defender, swatting at the ball. So he has to worry about kind of defending the basketball from his guy that's guarding him. So he's got to protect the ball. We're coming off. Our big man, he's going to have to contain the ball handler until our guard can get here and recover. So Christian, go on. Now he's staying wide. He's staying wide. And we're coming back for the trap. Our second point is, when we come to get the trap, we got to come with hands high and wide. We're trying to get a deflection out of this. If he were to leave his feet or if he were to try to make a pass, we're coming with hands high and wide, hoping to get a deflection. When our guard comes to double team, we want to make sure we don't let the ball split us. So we're going to tee our feet right here, and we're going to be big and wide. Now we've got our double team like we want. We have our trap. We want this guy to have to give the ball up. So mission accomplished. He's got to make a pass. Great player, he's got the ball out of his hands.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hoop Show. Don't forget, in just a matter of weeks when high school basketball starts, we will be bringing you the best high school basketball action on the Southeast and maybe even nationwide at netcastsports.com. We'll see you next week.